Hey, thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we are tracking storms across the Rockies today, southern Rockies and High Plains. And actually, we were so excited to get to this forecast, I forgot my clicker. So let me grab my clicker real quick. And let's go ahead and get to those top weather headlines. We called this a hail of a forecast. Yes, it is. We spent a lot of time, Michaela and I spent a lot of time on the hail forecast today. So we think that we've got a great forecast to show you in just a few minutes. Now, here's the big headline that we're going to be talking about today. Large hail possible for the south central Rockies and the High Plains, including Denver and Cheyenne. Okay, so those will be the big things that we'll be talking about today, Denver and Cheyenne. We're going to pivot to the east as we head into the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday, across Kansas, including Wichita, Kansas City, and then down into Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, Tulsa. So we've got a lot of big cities on the forecast here. You go out into the Atlantic, it's not terribly impressive. Lorenzo is spinning out. It's not a very impressive hurricane at this point. Tropical storm, not a hurricane. Never went to hurricane. Alrighty, let's go to your yesterday storm reports here. We got some high wind down in Los Angeles, but other than that, it really was not an impressive day yesterday. High wind, that's really all that we saw down here. Several severe thunderstorm warnings in this area, which I know is pretty rare for this area of the country. Moving on to what we could see today. So we've got this high pressure system that's setting up. However, what we're really watching for is this boundary that's highlighted right here in brown. This is going to help to initiate storms today. Now, these storms down to the south, that's going to be your tornado risk. These storms farther up to the north, there is your hail risk right there. So that's important to note. We'll talk more about that here in just a few minutes, but as this continues to track to the central and eastern portion of the U.S., then we're going to see more storms for places like Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri, and that's all the way into the weekend. So we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. Pretty quiet down in Florida today. We've got a few light showers across Iowa right now, and then we've got a few more showers out to the west. Nothing is severe right now. 70s and 80s are your current temperatures out the door, so still a little bit above average for this time of the year. You know, we still have this high pressure system in play, but as this low pressure system continues to track to the central or eastern portion of the U.S., that's whenever we're going to see more active and wet weather. So let's go ahead and get into it. Here is your hail forecast today. Yes, do you see this big blob of yellow highlighted right here, yellows and oranges? That's what you're going to be focusing on today for those larger hailstones. Now, most of the time, you've watched the forecast before, you know that we say if you see orange, it probably means up to golf ball size hail. So let's show that one more time. I'm going to restart this graphic and show you where do you see orange at today. We see it in the northern side of Denver, Colorado. We see it in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and then mainly in the western side of Nebraska. One more time here. Ooh, Cheyenne, we've even got some red slipping in there. So let's go ahead and take a look at your forecast for today. Your hail forecast, again, really pinpoints the northern side of Denver all the way into Cheyenne and western side of Nebraska. So Denver right now, we have you guys in a very isolated risk for storms today. I think for the most part, these storms are going to go to the east of Denver, but we'll show you the timeline here in just a few minutes. If you go up to the north, these storms will be a little bit more widespread across places like Cheyenne and Alliance, Nebraska. Let's zoom down into that area. Again, most storms are going to form up to the north and maybe to the east of Denver, and then they're going to track into the western side of Nebraska. As you go down to the south, you're going to see a very, very small hailstones and a pretty low chance for small hailstones as well. What about your max hail size for today? While most hailstones are going to be golf ball size and smaller, you could get some very isolated hailstones that get up to hen egg sized hail, those 2-inch size hailstones, larger than the size of a golf ball. Again, I think it's going to be pretty isolated, but as you saw from the hail model just a few minutes ago, we absolutely could see that today. Moving on to your wind forecast here, pretty low chance for wind or for extreme wind up in the northern portion of this risk. If you go farther down to the south, I think that you have a pretty good chance for some stronger wind speeds. There's a look at the radar on top of that wind risk. Let's go to that tornado risk as well. Northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. We've got Alamosa included in this tornado risk today, and Santa Fe as well. It's going to be a pretty isolated tornado risk. However, it's still on the board, so we absolutely have to talk about it here. Let's move on to your timeline. So if we go to look at the timeline here, maybe You know, this graphic always gives us a little bit of trouble. If we go to look at the timeline, what we're going to see, we're going to start with your nationwide view, and then we're going to go down into Colorado and New Mexico. Then we're going to go up into places like Nebraska and Wyoming. So let's go ahead, let's zoom down. Yep, there you go. What we're going to see are these first few initial storms starting pretty early on in the day. So we're talking maybe 2, 3, 4 o'clock. These are mostly going to stay in the southern portion of Colorado and northern portion of New Mexico. That's going to be your tornado and your wind risk in this area. However, later on in the day, if we go farther up to the north, that's whenever we start to see that hail risk. 6, 7, 8 o'clock tonight, that's whenever we see the hail risk. So let's go into this area. Starting in Denver by about 6 o'clock this evening, that's whenever we see our first few initial storms. Cheyenne, I'd push you about an hour earlier, 5 o'clock this evening, for storms in this area, eastern Wyoming. However, if we go a little bit farther to the east into places like Nebraska and South Dakota, it's going to be a late night system for you. We're talking about nocturnal storms. Again, it's going to be dark at this point. It may be very difficult to see these coming. Now, we don't have a large tornado risk today. It's pretty low. That main risk in this area is going to be that large hail. However, if you have the opportunity, to move your car inside the garage, I think that would be a good idea before you go to bed tonight, because you may be woken up to those storms overnight tonight. I mean, look at this. It's 11 o'clock in Rapid City. You've got rain coming down in your area. Alrighty, moving on here, let's talk city specific here. So let's go down into Denver first. Let's talk about the timeline in Denver. We have pinpointed Denver for isolated storm initiation right around 6 o'clock tonight. But it's going to be more widespread by about 8 to 9 o'clock, and then it's finally going to end by about midnight, so you could probably go to bed pretty comfortably. Again, just a reminder here, this is central time, because we are located centrally in the central portion of the U.S. Central time zone here. Let's talk about the max hail size here. Now for Denver, could you see an isolated hailstone up to ping pong ball size hail? I think it's not out of the question. However, most likely, it's not going to be that large. Most likely, you're probably talking about quarter size hailstones. It's going to be a very, very low chance for anything larger than the size of a quarter. Let's take a look at the timeline right here. You can see those first few initial storms going up to the east of you. That's right around 6 o'clock. Still pretty isolated by 6 o'clock this evening. However, more widespread as we head into the late night hours, 8, 9, 10 o'clock tonight. Alrighty, moving on, let's talk about the tornado risk in Denver. It's a very, very low tornado risk today. That high wind risk, I put it at about a 30% chance for high winds, anywhere from 60 to 70 miles an hour, probably closer to 60 miles an hour. And because these storms are moving so fast, I'm not too worried about the flooding risk either. It's a very low flood risk for this evening as well. Going up to Cheyenne, Wyoming now, once again, you are also seeing that hail risk, honestly, maybe a little bit larger than what I've put here. I've got 30% right here, maybe I'd go up to 40%. Larger hailstones also possible in the southeastern side of Cheyenne today. Wind speeds up to 60, maybe 70 miles an hour. Not worried about that flooding risk and not too worried about that tornado risk either. As you look at the flood risk, it's mainly down in Colorado and New Mexico. So that's your flood risk for today. For tomorrow, we go up to the north into North Dakota. By Friday, we don't have a flood risk on the board quite yet. However, I would keep an eye on places in Kansas on Friday. So let's talk about Thursday first, and then we'll get to Friday after that. Before we do we have any weather questions right now? I don't see any weather questions. Tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, Wyoming? All of these places going to get storms this week. I know we have a few Oklahoma viewers on there right now. So Kansas on Thursday, we're watching for the western side of Kansas on Thursday. You're going to see a very isolated hail and wind risk here. As we head into Friday, most of the day will be dry. Most of the day, maybe a light to moderate shower, maybe a strike of lightning, but most of the day will be dry. It's going to be the later portion on Friday into early Saturday morning. That's when you get these storms. So taking a look at the risk, we showed you this yesterday. Now we're shifting it down to the south, still including Kansas City, Wichita in that storm risk here, but now we're adding in Oklahoma as well. And this is very consistent to what the Storm Prediction Center showed you this morning as well. So we've got Woodward, OKC, Tulsa, Wichita all included in this risk here. Let's talk about hail. Where will the largest hailstones be? We're thinking on the southwestern side of the risk. So we're talking about the tail end of these storms here where it gets a little bit more isolated farther down to the south in places like Woodward, Clinton, maybe Fort Sill getting in on the action there as well. I think we'll zoom in here. Yeah, let's zoom in. Let's talk about the risks here. Now, one thing that you're going to see whenever we talk about the timeline is that we've got widespread showers and storms moving across this area. As you go farther down to the south, these are a lot more isolated. Now, what an isolated storm does is it has a lot of room to organize, and it's got a lot of time to organize as well without more storms on top of it kind of impeding that organization. For Friday, again, this is Friday, not Thursday. For Friday afternoon into the overnight hours, the largest hailstone you'll probably see is up to the size of a ping pong ball, but a quick caveat with that, we are still about 72 hours out from that storm system, so we will have a lot more information over the next few days. We're gonna have a lot more information tomorrow and even more information on Friday morning. So make sure that you're coming back for your forecast every day because it just will get better and better. All right, let's take a look at your timeline here. By 7 o'clock, maybe a shower or two. But for the most part, everyone is dry on Friday. You have Friday afternoon plans, maybe some early dinner, no problems there. As we head into the late night hours on Friday, that's whenever things get really interesting. You can see those first few showers and storms going up in St. Joe by 5:30 on Friday evening. Then we really start to see this expand all the way down into the central portion of Kansas, northern portion of Oklahoma as we head into the late night hours Friday and again into early Saturday morning. At this point, most of us are probably in bed, fast asleep, and the lightning and the thunder, maybe hail and high wind could also wake us up as we head into the overnight hours. So just something important, you need to make sure that you have multiple ways to get your weather alerts Friday night into Saturday morning in this area. We're gonna have some widespread rain here, maybe even some flooding issues in this area as well. I always watch for the eastern side of Kansas for flooding because you could have some training going on in this area. As I mentioned earlier, we've got more widespread showers and storms across Kansas, and it becomes a lot more isolated as we get into Oklahoma. Those storms become a little bit more sparse down there. Alrighty, continuing through your timeline here, it looks like we are going into Arkansas and Missouri by early Saturday morning. So by 7 a.m. Saturday morning, we have another chance for storms. All right, let's talk about it here. There's your Thursday risk. There's your Friday risk. There's your Saturday risk. And we've been talking about Saturday since Monday. So we had a day 6 risk on Monday, and we said keep an eye on this day. Now, I'll tell you another caveat with this storm risk is it's all about timing. If this system moves too fast or too slow, we will not see such an impactful risk that you've probably seen on social media. A lot of people are talking about that tornado risk and that high wind risk and the hail risk on Saturday. And yes, it's absolutely possible, but we are still so far out from the storm system reaching this area that we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. No one does. We don't have the right information, the right details for this. But we do know that we will most likely have some sort of severe weather starting early in the day out in Missouri into eastern Oklahoma, into western Arkansas, and then continuing to track to the east as we head into the rest of the day on Saturday. So another, just put it on your calendar, make sure that you're keeping an eye on the weather this weekend. There you go, there's your forecast. Any other questions before we hop off of here today? I want to go talk about Lorenzo. Now it's a tropical storm, however, it is weakening pretty significantly. Only at 40 miles an hour for those wind speeds right now, so it's barely hanging on to its tropical storm categorization. Other than that, it's moving to the north at about 14 miles an hour. It's about to turn back to the east over the next 24 hours, but it won't be a tropical storm at that point. It is still hurricane season. However, it feels more like severe weather season with all of these storm risks that we have this week. By the next time we get our next storm, it'll be named Melissa. We officially have 12 storms, I think, this year. So our HailTrace forecast has verified, even though we're slightly below average for our normal year. But we still have some time. We've got about 2 or 3 more weeks that we could see some activity out in the Atlantic. Alrighty, and there's your forecast. Yeah, last year, do you remember this time last year? We were looking at Leslie, we were looking at the very end of Milton, Nadine and Oscar this time last year. It was a very, very busy October and November last year. When will it finally cool down? Well, all of this rain, of course, is going to help us cool down over the next few days, but really this low pressure system carrying these cooler temperatures across the west and into central portion of the U.S. by the end of this week, that's going to help us to cool down as we head into the weekend. It's not going to last long. Temperatures will warm right back up early next week, and we have a really good chance to stay above average, or temperatures to stay warmer than normal as we head into the end of this month. I feel like I have shown the same graphic just over and over and over. It just keeps looking the same. We just keep telling you we're going to be above average, warmer than normal, especially for central and western U.S. It's not changing. That's just how it's going to be as we head into the end of October. Temperatures warmer than average. I know that we've already broken some records here in Oklahoma with one of the warmest Octobers so far on record. So we'll have to see what the rest of the month looks like. Thankfully, we will be getting some rain in here before our dry season in the winter, and we will absolutely need that. I told you guys a few days ago, I'll tell you this again, warm air and moisture usually means more severe weather. And that's exactly what we see as we watch this jet stream. Watch that like orange area right there, that's the jet stream. As we watch that continue to move to the east and this high pressure system move off to the east as well, that's not the only trough that we have moving through. We have another one moving through early next week. So we will most likely see this severe weather pattern continue not only this week, but also into next week as well. All right, thanks for joining us today. Meteorologist Taylor Cox. We will have a forecast again tomorrow at noon. So we have this every single weekday at noon. Join us for that as well. We'll talk more about Friday and Saturday tomorrow. Follow us in the meantime on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, and give us a call at 855-334-4245 or email us at info@hailtrace.com for all of your questions about hail, wind, and tornado maps. So our meteorologists, they map storms 24/7. You know, whenever you see it on the radar, you say, what in the world is going on with that storm? They know. They know if it's hail, wind, or tornado. So we have that all mapped at HailTrace.com. Head over there if you have any more questions. All right, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you back here, same